The modern horror landscape is often dominated by the jump, scare, heavy mechanics of the Conjuring universe, yet Netflix hides a trove of darker, more cerebral nightmares that demand your attention. This curated collection moves beyond mere startling noises, venturing into the realms of visceral psychological torment, gothic dread, and masterfully crafted tension. From the sun-drenched hills of Italy to the claustrophobic interiors of British social housing, these films represent the genre's capacity for high art and harrowing storytelling. Prepare to explore 15 overlooked masterpieces that offer a far more disturbing and lingering fear than any mainstream franchise entry. Number 1. A Classic Horror Story, 2021. The narrative begins with a deceptively familiar premise. A group of strangers sharing a ride through southern Italy crashes their RV into a tree, awakening in a forest that defies geographical logic. What follows is a brutal descent into folk horror that feels like a visceral collision between Midsommar and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The tension is palpable as the survivors encounter a rustic cabin adorned with grotesque murals of the three deities, Osso, Mastasso, and Carcagnoso. Matilda Lutz delivers a harrowing performance as Elisa, anchoring the film's shocking violence with a palpable sense of dread. The film subverts expectations with a meta, cinematic twist that recontextualizes the torture porn aesthetic, turning the audience's voyeurism back on itself in a finale that is as intellectually stimulating as it is gruesome. Directors Roberto De Feo and Paolo Stripoli have crafted a love letter to the genre that simultaneously deconstructs its most tired tropes. Produced by Colorado Film, the movie utilizes a vibrant, almost saturation, heavy color palette that contrasts sharply with the gloom typically associated with Italian horror. The cinematography emphasizes the claustrophobia of the open woods, using wide shots that feel imprisoning rather than liberating. While it pays homage to the legendary giallo films of the 70s, the score moves between orchestral dread and jarring silence, heightening the unease. Critically, it stands as a bold entry in the spaghetti horror revival, earning praise for its audacity to blend folklore with biting social commentary on media consumption. Number 2. Rattlesnake, 2019. This psychological thriller operates on a nightmare logic that is suffocating in its simplicity. Carmen Ejogo plays Katrina, a single mother whose cross-country drive turns into a surreally terrifying ordeal when her daughter is bitten by a rattlesnake in the Texas desert. After a mysterious woman saves the child, Katrina learns the harrowing price, a soul for a soul. The narrative is a taut, ticking clock morality play, forcing a compassionate woman to stalk a rural town in search of someone deserving of death. The tension here isn't derived from monsters, but from the visceral ethical decay of the protagonist. Ijogo's performance is a tour de force of desperate restraint, conveying the internal collapse of a mother pushed to the brink of murder by supernatural blackmail. Directed by Zach Hilditch, previously known for the apocalyptic thriller These Final Hours, Rattlesnake eschews heavy CGI for practical, atmospheric dread. The production takes full advantage of the bleak, sun-scorched desert locations, creating a sense of isolation that mirrors the protagonist's internal state. The cinematography often utilizes harsh daylight to expose the horror, a technique that removes the comfort of shadows and leaves the character nowhere to hide. While the film flew under the radar upon release, it serves as a fascinating study in minimalist horror, with a sound design that emphasizes the dry, rattling heat of the setting. It is a lean, mean piece of filmmaking that prioritizes suspense over spectacle. Number 3. Malevolent, 2018. Set in 1986 Glasgow, this film explores the toxic dynamic between sibling scam artists Angela and Jackson, who fake paranormal encounters for cash until they stumble upon a truly haunted orphanage. Florence Pugh, in one of her pivotal early roles, delivers a performance that radiates vulnerability and grit. The narrative shifts masterfully from a character-driven drama about grief and exploitation into a visceral, blood-soaked nightmare. The tension in the orphanage is suffocating, built not just on supernatural activity, but on the gruesome reality of the human violence that occurred there. Pugh's ability to convey sheer terror elevates the material, grounding the ghostly occurrences in a heavy, emotional reality that makes the climax deeply disturbing. Director Olaf de Fleur Johannesson adapts the novel Hush by Eva Konstantopoulos, bringing a distinctively gray, melancholic aesthetic to the production. The film's visual language is steeped in the damp, gothic atmosphere of the United Kingdom, using shadowed interiors and muted colors to reflect the character's moral ambiguity. The production design of the orphanage is meticulous, creating a space that feels physically heavy with history. While critics were mixed on the pacing, the film is a significant entry for its refusal to rely solely on jump scares, instead blending a ghost story with the brutality of a slasher. The score is understated, allowing the sound of creaking floorboards and silenced screams to carry the horror. Number 4. Caliber, 2018. This is less a traditional horror and more a nerve-shredding exercise in anxiety and moral collapse. Two lifelong friends, Vaughn and Marcus, head to the Scottish Highlands for a hunting trip that goes catastrophically wrong within minutes. The plot revolves around a single, fatal mistake and the subsequent cover-up, which traps the men in a village where every interaction feels laden with threat. Jack Lowden and Martin McCann deliver incredible performances, capturing the sweating, shaking reality of guilt and paranoia. The tension is relentless and visceral. There are no ghosts here, only the terrifying inescapability of consequences. It plays out like a Greek tragedy in hunting gear, culminating in a finale that is emotionally shattering and impossible to forget. Matt Palmer's directorial debut is a masterclass in tension, earning him the Michael Powell Award for Best British Feature Film. The production was shot on location in Scotland, and the cinematography by Mark Jory captures the majestic, indifferent beauty of the landscape, which contrasts cruelly with the ugly situation unfolding. The film's pacing is deliberate, tightening the noose around the characters with every scene. Palmer refuses to sensationalize the violence, presenting it with a stark, blunt realism that makes it all the more harrowing. Caliber is a critical darling that remains criminally underseen, praised for its tight script, and the suffocating atmosphere of rural isolation it perfectly evokes. Number 5. Hush, 2016. The premise is high, concept simplicity at its finest. A deaf, mute writer living in isolation must survive a masked killer circling her home. The film is a masterclass in sensory deprivation horror. Kate Siegel's performance as Maddie is physical and expressive, requiring her to carry the entire emotional weight of the film without dialogue. The narrative is a relentless game of cat and mouse that subverts the standard final girl tropes by removing the protagonist's ability to hear her attacker's approach. The tension is excruciating, relying on visual cues and vibration rather than auditory warnings. It is a visceral survival thriller that feels immediate and grounded, stripping away supernatural elements to focus on raw, human ingenuity and the will to live. Director Mike Flanagan, now a titan of horror with The Haunting of Hill House, demonstrated his mastery of the genre early with this tight, low-budget gem. The sound design is the film's most critical technical achievement, effectively putting the audience in Maddie's headspace by dropping out audio completely at key moments. Produced by Blumhouse, the film is efficient and lean, wasting not a single frame. The cinematography uses the layout of the house as a weapon, establishing spatial geography that becomes crucial during the climax. Hush remains one of the most critically acclaimed horror films on the platform, praised for its innovative use of sound, or lack thereof, to generate fear. Number 6. Cam, 2018. Dive into the disorienting world of online sex work with this psychological techno thriller. Madeline Brewer gives a mesmerizing dual performance as Alice, a cam girl obsessed with rankings, and the mysterious doppelganger that hijacks her account. The narrative is a surreal exploration of identity theft in the digital age, blending the anxiety of Black Mirror with the logic of a fever dream. The horror here is existential. Alice watches helplessly as a version of herself performs acts she would never do, eroding her agency and reality. The film captures the specific, neon-lit isolation of the internet, creating a visceral sense of violation that is unique to our modern, screen-obsessed era. Directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by former cam girl Isa Mazzy, the film possesses an authenticity that is rare in depictions of sex work. The production design is striking, utilizing the saturated pinks and purples of the cam room to create a jarring contrast with the drab reality of Alice's offline life. The film was celebrated on the festival circuit for its non-judgmental, insider perspective and its refusal to moralize the protagonist's profession. The score is synth, heavy and pulsating, driving the frenetic energy of the online sequences. Cam is a tour de force of independent horror filmmaking, offering a smart, terrifying look at the fracture between our digital and physical selves. Number 7. Apostle, 2018. Thomas Richardson, a man with a fractured faith, travels to a remote Welsh island in 1905 to rescue his kidnapped sister from a religious cult. Dan Stevens is captivating as the tormented lead, navigating a community that worships a twisted goddess of the earth. The plot slowly unravels from a mystery into a phantasmagoria of gore and folk horror. The violence here is visceral and unflinching, featuring some of the most harrowing torture sequences committed to film in recent years. The narrative explores the corruption of faith and the literal hunger of the land, building to a chaotic, blood-soaked climax that feels biblical in its intensity and destruction. Gareth Evans, best known for the high-octane action of The Raid, brings his kinetic energy to the horror genre with spectacular results. The cinematography is sweeping and gritty, capturing the mud, blood, and gray skies of the period setting. Evans constructs the island as a living, breathing entity, using practical effects to create the grotesque, nature-based horror that defines the film's third act. The score is a dissonant, screeching accompaniment that grates on the nerves. While the runtime is substantial, the slow burn approach allows for a deep layering of mythology and atmosphere. Apostle is a Gothic masterpiece that stands as a brutal testament to the dangers of fanaticism. Number 8. Eli, 2019. Eli is a young boy plagued by a debilitating autoimmune disorder, forced to live in plastic bubbles until his parents take him to a sterile, secluded mansion for a cure. Charlie Shotwell carries the film with a performance that balances childhood innocence with growing paranoia. The narrative initially plays as a classic haunted house story, with Eli seeing specters in the reflective surfaces of his medical prison. However, the tension ratchets up as the treatments become increasingly torture-like. The film is famous for its third act pivot, a twist so wild and totally unexpected that it recontextualizes every scene that came before. It transforms from a medical drama into something far more diabolical and kinetic. Director Ciaran Foy manages the sterile, claustrophobic atmosphere of the medical facility with precision. The production design uses clean lines and bright lights to create a horror setting that is frighteningly clinical rather than dark and cobwebbed. The cinematography plays with reflections and translucent surfaces, emphasizing Eli's isolation from the physical world. While the film received mixed reviews for its uneven tone, the audacity of its screenplay, which landed on the 2015 Blacklist, makes it a unique entry in the genre. It uses visual effects to deliver a finale that is an explosion of supernatural energy, marking it as a hidden gem for fans of high-concept horror. Number 9. The Babysitter, Killer Queen, 2020. 2 years after surviving a satanic cult, Cole is trying to survive high school, only to be dragged back into a blood-soaked nightmare. Judah Lewis returns with a frantic, endearing energy, while the film introduces Jenna Ortega as a new, cynical ally. The narrative doubles down on the grindhouse aesthetic of the first film, blending absurd gore with rapid-fire comedy. The pacing is breathless, moving from one creative kill to the next with the energy of a music video. It subverts the trauma trope by embracing the sheer lunacy of its premise, delivering a fun, splatter-filled ride that never takes itself too seriously, but still manages to deliver genuine moments of suspense. McGee returns to the director's chair, infusing the sequel with his signature hyper-stylized visual flair. The film is saturated with pop culture references, on-screen text, and frames, creating a comic book come-to-life aesthetic. The soundtrack is a killer mix of classic rock and modern tracks that drive the action. While often dismissed by high-brow critics, the production values are high, with practical gore effects that are both grotesque and hilarious. It serves as a satirical commentary on the horror genre itself, acknowledging the ridiculousness of sequels while delivering exactly the kind of over-and-top entertainment fans of the original demanded. Number 10. The Perfection, 2018. This twisted tale of jealousy and revenge in the world of elite classical music is a narrative labyrinth. Allison Williams and Logan Browning play rival cellists whose relationship spirals into body horror and psychological warfare. To discuss the plot in detail would be to spoil its multiple, jarring shifts in perspective. The film keeps the audience off balance, moving from sophisticated drama to gross, out horror to revenge thriller with whiplash speed. The performances are icy and precise, masking deep wells of trauma. The tension is visceral, particularly in a bus scene that is surely one of the most uncomfortable sequences on Netflix. It is a masterpiece of manipulation, constantly rewriting its own truth. Director Richard Shepard crafts a film that is elegant in its visual presentation but wrought at its core, mirroring the themes of the story. The cinematography is polished and fluid, utilizing the rich, warm tones of concert halls to contrast with the sterile horror that follows. The score, naturally, is a standout, weaving complex cello compositions into the fabric of the suspense. The film addresses dark themes of institutional abuse with a pulp sensibility that makes it both entertaining and deeply unsettling. It is a polarizing, campy tour de force that refuses to fit into a single box, demanding the viewer's complete surrender to its insanity. Number 11. What Lies Below, 2020. A socially awkward teenager, Liberty, returns home from camp to find her mother in a frantic romance with a man who seems too perfect to be human. Emma Horvath plays the lead with a palpable sense of teen angst and suspicion, while Trey Tucker is unnervingly perfect as the boyfriend. The narrative taps into the primal fear of the intruder who has been invited in, blending domestic tension with cosmic aquatic horror. The film builds a sense of uncanny valley dread, where small behaviors, a strange smile, a weird drink, accumulate into a terrifying realization. The climax shifts into weird fiction territory, offering a neon-soaked Lovecraftian reveal that is both beautiful and horrifying. Indie filmmaker Braden R. Duemler directs this small-scale creeper, making excellent use of a single location to build claustrophobia. The cinematography emphasizes water motifs and blue-green lighting, foreshadowing the film's aquatic twist. The production budget was low, but the film punches above its weight by focusing on atmosphere and the creepy charisma of its antagonist. It went viral on Netflix for its bizarre ending, which left many viewers confused and disturbed. It is a modern B-movie in the best sense, prioritizing mood and a specific slimy aesthetic over complex plotting, resulting in a memorable, if divisive, experience. Number 12. His House, 2020. This is a devastating fusion of social realism and supernatural terror. Bol and Rial are refugees from South Sudan, struggling to adjust to life in a decaying English council house that is infested with ghosts. Soap Dirisu and Wunmi Mosaku deliver heartbreaking performances, portraying the trauma of displacement and survivor's guilt. The horror is twofold: the racism and hostility of their new country, and the apith, or night witch, that has followed them across the ocean. The film uses its supernatural elements to visualize the scars of war, creating a visceral, emotional experience that is far scarier than traditional haunted house tropes. It is a harrowing masterpiece of empathy and fear. Remy Week's directorial debut is a stunning achievement in British cinema, earning a British Academy of Film and Television Arts Award for Outstanding Debut. The production design transforms the house into a shifting labyrinth, with walls that peel back to reveal the ocean or the war-torn streets of Sudan. The sound design is immersive, blending the creaks of the house with the whispers of the dead. Weeks uses horror as a lens to examine the refugee experience, ensuring that the ghosts are not just jump scares, but manifestations of a past that cannot be outrun. It is a critically adulated film that elevates the genre, offering a profound, terrifying look at what it means to be haunted. Number 13. Things Heard and Seen, 2021. Based on the novel All Things Cease to Appear, this film is a slow, burn Gothic melodrama set in the Hudson Valley. Amanda Seyfried stars as an artist who moves to a historic farmhouse with her husband, played by James Norton, only to discover that both her marriage and her home are rotting from the inside. The narrative weaves together the history of the house with the spiritualist philosophy of Emanuel Swedenborg. The horror here is subtle and atmospheric, focusing on the gaslighting and domestic abuse that isolates the protagonist. Norton is terrifyingly charming as the sociopathic husband, creating a tension that is grounded in human evil, amplified by the supernatural presence watching them. Directors Shari Springer Berman and Robert Pulcini bring a painterly eye to the film, inspired by the Hudson River School of Art. The cinematography captures the ominous beauty of the upstate New York landscape, using natural light and shadow to create a sense of foreboding. The production is rich in period detail, grounding the 1980s setting with authenticity. While the film is more of a domestic thriller with ghosts than a straight horror movie, it offers a sophisticated literary take on the haunted house genre. It explores the idea that bad men are far more dangerous than any spirit, delivering a chilling, tragic conclusion. Number 14. The Open House, 2018. Following a tragedy, a mother and her teenage son retreat to a relative's mountain vacation home, which happens to be on the market. The premise exploits the inherent vulnerability of the open house concept, strangers walking through your living space while you are gone. Dylan Minnette and Piercy Dalton anchor the film with grounded, realistic performances. The narrative is a study in quiet, gnawing dread, Objects move slightly, doors open, and the feeling of being watched becomes suffocating. There are no supernatural monsters here, only a human threat that is terrifyingly random and motiveless. The film is infamous for its bleak, nihilistic ending that refuses to offer the audience any catharsis. Directors Matt Angel and Suzanne Coote created this polarizing thriller on a micro-budget. The filmmaking relies heavily on silence and the geography of the house to build suspense. The cinematography uses long, static shots to make the viewer scan the frame for intruders, creating an interactive sense of paranoia. While it was panned by general audiences for its lack of resolution, it remains an effective exercise in realistic terror. It strips away the comfort of narrative logic. Sometimes, bad things happen to good people for no reason at all, and that is the scariest thought of all. Number 15. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, 2016. This is a ghost story told in a whisper. Ruth Wilson stars as Alive, a nurse caring for an elderly horror novelist in a home that seems to exist out of time. The narrative is non-linear and poetic, prioritizing mood and atmosphere over plot. Wilson's voiceover is lyrical and haunting, guiding the viewer through a slow-motion tragedy. The film is not interested in scaring you with loud noises. Instead, it seeks to unsettle you with the inevitability of death. It is a visceral meditation on mortality and memory, where the ghost is a smudge in the corner of the frame, always present but rarely seen. Osgood Perkins, son of Psycho star Anthony Perkins, directs with a singular, avant-garde vision. The cinematography is dark and oppressive, often obscuring the characters in shadow or placing them in the corner of the screen to emphasize the emptiness of the house. The sound design is minimal, filled with the groans of the settling house and the ticking of clocks. It is a polarizing art house horror film that challenges the viewer's patience but rewards them with a lingering sense of melancholy and dread. It is a cinematic poem about the way houses hold on to the dead and how the dead hold on to us. These 15 films prove that the horror genre is far more expansive and intellectually rigorous than the multiplex often suggests. From the social commentary of His House to the narrative twists of a classic horror story, these movies utilize the language of fear to explore the darkest corners of the human condition. They remind us that true horror isn't just about what jumps out of the dark, but about the atmosphere, the tension, and the lingering ideas that follow you long after the screen goes black. If you are tired of the formulaic scares of the Conjuring universe, this list is your gateway to a world of overlooked cinematic nightmares waiting to be discovered on Netflix.